How much does it cost to self-publish a book in South Africa in 2024? Hi guys, on this short clip, I'm going to be sharing with you a breakdown of what you might expect to pay in order to publish your book, right? So I'm going to start with the most important thing, which is book editing. When it comes to book editing and proofreading, usually the charges are per word. For example, the cheapest that you might possibly pay for editing will be 20 cents per word. And so if your book has 25,000 words, it's gonna be 20 cents times 25,000 words. I think that's roughly around 6,000 something rand. So when it comes to editing, it's usually per word as opposed to per pages. And yeah, when it comes to proofreading, also it's usually per word. The cheapest that you would pay for proofreading, I think 8 cent. Anything from 8 cent all the way to 1 rand. The same with book editing, you can expect to pay anything from 20 cent per word all the way to 2 rands, also depending on the company that you are using. So you just multiply the number of words by the cost per word. And so when it comes to book covers are not that complex in terms of pricing. Usually you'll be charged based on the skill and perhaps the experience of the graphic designer. And the cheapest that you might be charged for a book cover, it's probably 500 rand all the way to 6,000 rand. But the cheapest, the entry level book cover designers will charge you something from sometimes even 300, depending on where you find your designers and how long they've been in the game. So expect to pay anything from 3,000 rand all the way to 8,000. Also, the other factor with book cover designs has to do with whether you provide an image for the cover or they have to use stock images where they need to get pictures that must be licensed. So you might find that there's also that fee of getting image online that are licensed. And for some, it might be a matter of you want your book cover to be illustrated, meaning they need to have an illustrator on board. So chances are that cover will cost you a couple of thousand rands, right? Now, when it comes to book layout and typesetting, the minimum cost would be 5 rand per word. So with layout, they charge you usually based on the number of pages, not words, pages. So if your book of 25,000 words, that's typically around 120 pages. Yeah, so if your book is like 25,000 words, whether it's a novel or an autobiography, whatever the case is, and if it's written in 12 in terms of the font, then your book would be slightly between 100 and 120 pages. So you can say 5 rand times 120 pages. So the fee varies also again in terms of the complexity of your book. Doing a layout for a novel and doing a layout for an academic book might be different because one might have diagrams and pictures and all of those things. So all of these things also factor in terms of the length of the layout design and also the cost. What am I missing? Book printing. When it comes to book printing, the prices also vary depending on which company you use and also, most importantly, the quantity of your book. So what you need to factor in terms of book printing is 1, the number of pages. It affects the cost. 2, does your book have pictures that you need them in color? If it's color, then it tends to be a bit more expensive. And then whether you print with a gloss cover or a matte cover, that doesn't affect the pricing. And also quantity. If you are printing 100 books, Perhaps you might be charged 45 Rand per copy. But if you are printing, say, 1,400 books, the fee can decline from 45 Rand a copy to maybe 28 Rand a copy, because you are printing a larger quantity of books. So it's also important to factor the cost from a quantity perspective and think around, if I'm printing 100 copies compared to 250, how much am I saving in between, or how much am I paying if I'm paying for a lower quantity of the books? So given all of these numbers, I'm sure they're still drumming in your head. What typically can be the overall cost of production for your book? Factoring all of the numbers that I've mentioned, you'd expect to pay something from 15,000 rands. That would be the minimum probably of how much book publishing will cost you, all the way from editing until book printing, and also depending on which service provider do you use.